So UAS stands for Unmanned Aerial Systems, just to kind of get that out of the way. That's more the term that the FAA and some of the industry uses in place of drones, but we'll use that interchangeably. So a quick overview, what we're going to talk about this morning, why drones. We'll start off with that. I think to a lot of you, it's probably pretty obvious, but just want to make sure to cover that and keep that fresh in your mind. And then we'll look at our history using drones in Encore and standing up our program, what we currently have today. Then we'll talk about some of the key regulations that dictate what we can or can't do with the drones. And then we'll look at what we are currently capable of, what our use cases are that we're doing right now, and then look to the future and see where we're planning on going, some of the cool stuff that we're looking at doing. It's a really exciting technology with a ton of use cases and capabilities there. So why drones? Encore has a lot of assets that we need to keep in working order in order to keep the lights on. Just in transmission alone, we have 13,500 miles of transmission line, which then also includes, almost 120,000 structures. And then you've got the miles and miles of conductors that go along with that and all the hardware that keeps everything up in the air. And then we also have, just over 2,000 stations in operation or planned, and that's growing pretty quickly. Our load is growing and we have a lot of equipment there. And so that dictates to, thousands of transformers and circuit breakers and switches, at least being some of the larger equipment in our stations. And so to keep the lights on, this all has to be in working order. And so how do we do that? We have preventative maintenance programs, and that includes visual inspections. So for transmission lines, that's walking patrols where at certain intervals, we'll make sure and have a patrolman go and walk the line and look at each structure and inspect each piece of hardware and insulator the best they can, using binoculars, that sort of thing. Within substations, that's visual inspections, looking up close, looking for leaks, and then using also infrared cameras as well to look for hot spots. In addition to those, we do helicopter patrols twice a year on all of our transmission lines, and that we really use to look for broken cross arms, floating phases that we haven't caught yet, vegetation management issues, trees growing on our right-of-ways, or right-of-way encroachments, that sort of thing. And then we also use diagnostic testing on our larger equipment, mainly in the substations, so transformers, switches, circuit breakers, making sure that those are all in working order and not trending in a bad direction. And aside from preventative maintenance, we also have to respond to outages, either from failed equipment, from storms that roll through, or even some that are caused by the public, like a car crashing into a power line or something like that. So where do the drones come in on all this? Here's kind of the biggest benefits that we've seen within the utility industry when we get the drones in, and safety is number one. That's the number one thing for Encore in general. But so the drones help us operate these a little safer. It's an opportunity to keep our personnel away from energized equipment and get something else up there to be able to get a closer look at our equipment. And can even keep somebody from having to climb a structure or even get up in a bucket truck, just higher risk activities. And they can also help us, not have to take outages on lines as well. And it gives you a better vantage point. You really can't see everything from the ground without having to climb it, that sort of thing. The drone can get you up there and look at the equipment close up and look from the top side. Like in this picture up on the top right, I circled some flashing on some insulators that we couldn't see from the ground. There was a line that had tripped out, and the fault had been narrowed down to a couple structure locations, and still weren't quite sure what the issue was. But once we got the drone up there, it was pretty obvious. It just helps justify having to take action at that specific location. Inaccessible locations, a lot of our transmission lines run across marshes, lakes, just really rough terrain. And so the drone can help us overcome some of those. Like in this picture in the bottom left, you can see that's a really marshy area, probably close to a lake, something like that, that had some birds nesting on there, 3 nests right over each transmission line, causing a lot of contamination. So really helps us get a clearer picture of what's going on our system. And then the other benefit, it can really help us with faster restoration times. After a storm rolls through, the drones can really help us get a big picture look and see exactly what we need to do in specific areas before we roll crews out. They can gather material quicker and be ready to go once they get out there to help get the lights back on. So a little history on Encore's drone usage and standing up our program. 2016 is kind of a key date just because that's when regulations changed. I know just being in the industry back in the early 2010s, is really when I started hearing about drones and maybe some of the benefits for utilities. But, most people weren't really jumping quite in yet because of some of the regulatory hurdles. Before 2016, the FAA required that you had to have a full pilot's license to operate drones commercially, and then also had to go and get what they call a Part 333 exemption. So, there really weren't a whole lot of folks that could jump in and do that right away. It was a big undertaking. But so in 2016, the FAA did change that. They published some new rules. Part 107 is how it's known. And this allowed an easier avenue to operate drones commercially. You didn't need a pilot's license anymore or an exemption. And it laid out the rules and the methods for being able to go do that. So at least from 2016 to 2019, Encore was utilizing a few contractors here and there to fly drones for detailed inspections or for storm response. Really just some one-offs when we thought we truly needed them. And so that takes us to 2019. And if you remember 2019, we had quite a few storms roll through our service territory. And one of those storms, we did use some contractor drones and had a little bit of trouble. There were definitely some hurdles there. And so upper management directed us to go ahead and establish our drone program to help overcome some of those. So 2019, we were busy creating this program, and that involved creating an SOP, standard operating procedures, and safety rules that were based off of industry safety practices and of course FAA regulations. We trained 37 pilots and helped them attain their UAS certificates through the FAA. And they spent a lot of time researching and procuring our aircraft. And so what does our current fleet look like? We've got 25 aircraft, and those are split up amongst our 20 transmission work centers. So each work center has a drone that they can use. And then transmission construction management has 3, and then equipment support has maintained a couple to help support other work groups as well. We currently have 34 certified pilots, and we're training 8 more. And then our day-to-day operations with the drones is, managing the aircraft fleet and the pilots, making sure we're all up to date on our certification requirements, on our flight time requirements to maintain proficiency, and making sure all the aircraft's in good working order and not trending in a bad direction. And then we also have to make sure we're updating the SOP and our safety rules for changing regulations. This is a field where it's changing pretty rapidly. Technology is growing a lot. A lot of people want to use the drones for different uses or want to get regulations changed to allow for more efficient operations. And so regulations are changing, and we have to make sure we maintain our SOP. And then we're also looking at the future, looking to purchase some additional aircraft with some greater capabilities. So I've mentioned the regulations, and there definitely are some key ones to keep in mind to understand what we can and can't do with the drones currently. And one of the big ones, like I mentioned, you have to have a UAS certificate from the FAA to be able to operate commercially. To do that, you have to go and take an initial knowledge test. You sign up with a testing center and go and take a 60-question multiple choice test on a computer. And then once you pass that, you can get your certificate. Pretty simple, but the FAA does want you to know quite a bit. And so this test covers, of course, the Part 107 rules, which dictates how we can operate the drones. But they also want you to know how to be able to read aeronautical charts and figure out which airspace you're going to be operating in. You need to know a little bit about the aviation weather and what it could do to a drone if you're flying in difficult weather, aircraft loading, airport operations. So you know how commercial airlines or even just other airplanes, manned aviation is going to come in and out of an airport, so you can have an idea of which way they might be going. They want you to know some aeronautical decision making as well, and understand some of the physiological factors on pilots. All of this is really just to emphasize safe operation. That's what the FAA is really concerned about. And then to keep your certificate, you have to go and take a recurrent knowledge test every 2 years, which I do have an asterisk there because that is changing here within the next month. And I'll get to that here in a second. So what are our operational rules? What are our limitations? So the FAA dictates you have to keep the drone within visual line of sight. So even though the drones are typically have a camera on them where you can see where you're going, see where you are from the screen on your controller, the FAA wants you to be able to see the actual drone itself at all times, so you can determine whether or not you're in the flight path of manned aviation or something of that nature. So that is a big limitation there. Definitely when you get into right-of-ways with lots of big trees and you're trying to go down the line a little bit, you can start to lose sight of it pretty quickly. You can't operate over people, and this one is another one that's changing a little bit. You can only fly during daylight, and again, that one's changing here within this month. And then if you are to fly in any controlled airspace, which means basically any airport with a control tower, you have to get authorization from air traffic control before you can fly there. And there's a couple ways you can do that. The FAA has made it pretty easy on a lot of them with the low altitude authorization and notification capability, known as LAANC, which is a online way to get an almost instant authorization around this airport at the dictated maximum altitude. So this is a great tool. It really helps us a lot when we're trying to fly near an airport. But there are some airports still that aren't a part of that. So I think about 80% of the airports are part of the LAANC system, but there are still some that aren't. And so when they're not, you have to go through the more manual authorization process, which depending on the airport can take up to 90 days. So that can be pretty difficult. Luckily, though, the FAA understands that for first responders responding to emergency situations, they really need to get out and fly quickly. And so they created an expedited authorization process that we've used a couple times since we are considered first responders after emergencies. And we've used it a few times and been able to get an authorization within an hour. So a really good tool there. Really grateful the FAA understands the need for us to get out quickly and fly. From a weather standpoint, you have to have minimum visibility of 3 miles to be able to fly, and then you have to stay 500 feet below or 2,000 feet horizontal from any clouds. So depending on cloud levels, you may not be able to fly. And really, one not dictated by the FAA, depending on your aircraft, you may not be able to fly in rain or snow, that sort of thing. So you really have to wait until weather clears out before you can get out and fly following a storm type of scenario. So I did mention there are a couple of rules that are changing. The FAA did publish some new rules at the end of last year that will go into effect this month, actually. One of the big ones is remote ID. And that's where they're going to require all drones that are required to register already must also have the ability to be remotely identified. This one is going to take some technological advances and some work from the makers of the drones. So operational, this rule won't take effect until September 2023. So that is coming in a couple years. Some of the other ones that change, like I mentioned, UAS operations over people. So they are creating an avenue for you to be able to operate over people. And then instead of the recurrent test that you have to go take, they're going to change it to an online recurrent training. So just a web-based training course that you can go and take, which will help make that a lot easier. And I think a lot of people will be keeping their certifications now, since it's not such a overbearing process having to go take a test again. And then they're also going to start allowing operations at night. So that'll be a big one for us, and we're looking at how we'll be able to benefit from that. So getting more into what we can currently do, what our current capabilities are and our use cases are. So this is the aircraft we have. We have 25 of these Mavic 2 Zooms. And this is how the kit of them looks. Got a nice hard shell case. So guys out in the field, aren't too worried about damaging those in their trucks or that sort of thing. The drone itself has a 12 megapixel camera, takes really good pictures. You can get up to 4K video on them as well. This one has a 2-time optical zoom, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at this price point that we were looking at with our budget, this was about one of the only options that had a little bit of zoom and was really beneficial in our minds, just because we could keep the drone a little bit further away from our assets, but still get a good picture on those. Can fly them up to 31 minutes. I think we typically get more about 25 minutes or so before we get uncomfortable with draining the battery much more. They have omnidirectional obstacle sensing, which is nice, but they do have tough times sometimes picking up conductors, shield wires, that sort of thing. But the obstacle sensing is a nice feature to have. It does have smart return to home features, which is always good. And we opted for what they call the smart controller, which has an integrated screen on it, so we don't have to rely on the pilot's phone or having an iPad on there as well. So that's worked out pretty well. And then we also equipped them with some spare batteries. So 4 total batteries in there. So you can get almost 2 hours of flight time out of them, and really probably be able to fly just about all day if you cycle through them and get them back on a charger once you've gone through a battery. And then, of course, some spare propellers in there as well. So what are our main use cases? Spot inspections is the big one. Really responding to either outages or equipment failures, looking for issues that are causing nuisance tripping, contamination on some of our insulators or conductors, and even some difficult to reach nameplates, like up on switches that are mounted on a structure like this one on the bottom right. That one in the bottom right with the switch, this is one where we're looking to see if the contacts were still good, and that's what's in the red circle. We're having some issues with the switch and wanted to make sure it was still in good working condition, and getting the drone up there was a really quick and easy way to get a good look at it. The picture on the bottom left, shows a lot of contamination from birds on these structures, and with the way these V-strings are oriented, that may be difficult to see from the ground. So the drone really proves beneficial to get that good vantage point and really see what's going on there. And the picture in the upper right, this was after an arm on a structure had failed. And so really just wanted to get a good idea of how that connection looked and be able to figure out what all was going to be needed to correct that problem. Storm response, that's another big use case. So really useful for getting out and doing a quick damage evaluation and getting you into areas where you can't really access them. Just like this picture on the right. You know, this was a distribution line we were helping to inspect, and you know, couldn't even get to a lot of this area with a UTV. So the drone proves pretty beneficial there. Picture on the bottom left was a really good save. We had a insulator fail on an adjacent structure, so that was pretty obvious. But went ahead and got the drone out and wanted to make sure and inspect some of the adjacent structures. You know, the one ahead of and behind the structure that had the failed insulator, and it's really a good thing we did, as you can kind of see. I know the picture's kind of small, but circled in here. On both structures, we also had broken crevices that you really couldn't see from the ground. And so this was a pretty big save here, because without knowing that was there, if crews got up and started working on the other structure and putting up some new insulators and hardware, you know, this could have snapped and caused some big issues and a big safety hazard there. That was a really big save. Some of the other uses, you know, aerial imagery is a really good use for it. You know, we can fly up to 400 feet, so that can get you a pretty good aerial shot of a pretty wide area. And mapping and photogrammetry is another one that's out there. So the drones have the capability of getting multiple pictures of an area, and you can bring those back and stitch those together to make basically a high resolution Google map of a station or a section of line, and that can come in real handy. A couple of the shots that we've been able to get, you know, down the bottom left, this is some aerial shots of a new substation being built, new switching station being built down in the Glen Rose district, and they've been using it to track construction progress and have some historical imagery of when that station was being built. So it could turn out to be pretty useful in the future. On the bottom right, this was down the Corsicana area after we had a little bit of a wildfire incident near our structures. And again, so the drone was very useful in getting that bird's eye view and really determine where the extent of the fire was and help us try to figure out where our structures may be damaged and what we need to go further inspect or maybe even possibly replace. And then the picture on the upper right was a case where we were looking to install a mobile transformer. And so the drone was really useful, getting a nice aerial shot to really determine how we might be able to pull that mobile transformer in, where we might be able to put it, and then just plan for how we're going to be able to connect it to, so we could get it in and do the job a lot quicker once we were ready for it. We also had a couple innovations as we were standing up this program back in 2019. First one is the Otis FAA module. So Otis, for those that don't know, is our transmission GIS system. Great database for you know, where all of our transmission lines are, substations are, and really a wealth of a whole lot of other information that's useful to many different people. But we were able to get the Otis team to integrate a new module that showed us where our controlled airspaces are. This is really useful for our pilots out in the field if they know they need to go inspect, you know, certain section of line or certain structures. They can pull up this module and zoom straight to those structures, straight to that line segment, and see if there is a controlled airspace around them that they need to go get authorization before they can get out and fly. You know, before they would have had to kind of go back and forth and try to figure out, okay, our lines in this area, and then try to correlate that to the area on the FAA map. So this has proven really beneficial. And then we also had the OnCore Media Portal. So with drones not manufactured in the U.S., there is a cybersecurity concern there. And so IT really jumped in and helped us with creating this media portal. It's a cloud-based storage location that we can go and put all of our photos and videos from the drones on and really keep them off of our OnCore network and really reduce any cybersecurity risk there. So, you know, kudos to IT for helping us stand that up in a really quick manner. So what are we looking to do in the future? Like I mentioned, there's so many different things you can do with the drones. But some of the stuff on top of our list is a fleet management software. That's got to be really important, helping us manage our fleet of aircraft, being able to track how much flight time we're getting on those, how many cycles are getting on batteries, so we can see if when they start to trend bad, and also help us just tracking flights. Go back and get a historical look on where we were flying, and then help us track all of our personnel, making sure all of our certifications are up to date, proficiency flight time is up to date, et cetera. And then might even give us a chance to have electronic checklists instead of the paper checklist we're currently using there. Comprehensive line and structure inspections will probably be the next step we truly take. Like I mentioned, we're mostly just using the drones right now for spot inspections. But comprehensive line and structure inspections would really help us enhance or possibly even replace some of the portions of our current preventive maintenance methods. It could take a large portion of the walking patrols, so free up our patrolmen to work on other things instead of having to do walking patrols possibly. But that's going to take a team of pilots. That's basically all they do is go and fly structures and get the pictures we need. We're also looking at upgraded aircraft and payloads, like I mentioned before. Top of our list is infrared, one with an infrared camera, and definitely a high zoom camera. They make them up where you can get 30 times zoom on them, which would be great if we're trying to look at a switch nameplate, and really just helps us, again, stay a little further off of our structures and help reduce any risk there. Corona cameras, even, I've seen people put Corona cameras on drones that could be pretty beneficial for us, and you can even get LiDAR on them as well, which could be beneficial. They also make some that operate in wet weather, so you can even operate in the rain. That's something we're looking at as well. Really, the holy grail is getting beyond visual line of sight operations. I mean, that's really is the key to unlocking the true potential of the drones, and creating really efficient operations. If you could fly a full line and back, and really get a good picture of what you got going on your assets, that would be really beneficial, and really help speed up that process. And then artificial intelligence and data analytics. This is a really growing field, and the drones fit right in with that. I think if we were to get a comprehensive inspection program and start to get a database full of images of all of our assets, you could then start implementing some machine learning to help identify all the pieces on our structures, on our insulators, on our hardware, and then even find anomalies within those. So find broken insulators, find missing cotter pins, find those types of anomalies. But like I mentioned, really truly the sky is the limit. The technology within drones is growing rapidly. Regulations are changing. The FAA understands that we could be doing a lot more with drones, and it'd be beneficial for everybody. And so they're trying to help push that along as well. And so we'll see where we can take it. But that was it for our presentation. We'll take care of some questions now, and I'll just go ahead and mention if you need any assistance with drones within your work group, feel free to reach out to Peter or myself, and we'll see what we can help out with there.
That was excellent. Thank you, Patrick. We have a million questions, so I'm just going to start it here at the top. I'm sure that you've covered a lot of these things, but I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about the piloting of the drones. So let me scroll back up here and get some from the top.
All right.
All right. So one person asked, what's the coolest or weirdest thing you've come across using the drones? And I know you talked about that one piece that you guys caught, which you said was a good safety catch.
Yeah, that was a cool one. That was a really good save, I think. Really showed the benefits of the drones. another one we had was seeing a bullet hole in a conductor.
Oh,
So
wow.
being able to look, you could look straight through the bullet hole from the air to the ground, and it was pretty obvious exactly what had happened there. It was pretty cool.
All right. So are there college classes or certifications for the drone operations?
I think there are some programs coming around. I know within even some of the aviation schools, I think like Embry-Riddle is one of the big ones out there. I know they have a UAS bachelor's in UAS program. But other than that, I'm not quite sure. There's plenty of online training courses that'll help you get your certification type of thing.
Great. A lot of questions about storm damage. I know we did a slide about that. Any storm damage assessments done so far? So have we utilized it for maybe DSD 1 and 2 this year?
We used them for 1 this year. So we did deploy a couple pilots, and we're able to help up there. I know I went down to the Buffalo area, and we were able to locate a down conductor in a right of way that we really couldn't get to, so that was beneficial. We've used them in multiple other storms. We did actually use them after the tornado that came through Dallas in 2019. And a couple others. I think I was in Arlington back in August, I want to say, after the storm rolled through there. But yeah, we've been used a couple times.
So then the next question that kind of pairs with that, are you guys using drones just in transmission, or do you assist in distribution as well?
So transmission is the only group that has the drones right now, but we have been assisting distribution for storm response or any other kind of unique cases where they think a drone will be beneficial.
Great. And then a question that goes to distribution, are there rules about drones flying over personal property or backyards or things of that nature?
There's not. So once you get in the air off the ground, all of that space is dictated by the FAA. So really the property owners don't own that space. Of course, we're going to be sensitive to flying over other people's property and try to not do it as much as possible. Really just trying to stay close to our assets, make sure they understand that's what we're doing. And so we also make sure and notify our area managers when we do have a flight coming up, so that they can get the word out to their municipalities that they cover, and that sort of thing. Try to make sure they know it's the utility out there working and not just somebody flying over their yard.
Perfect. So one person asked, are the Encore drones much different than the drones that can be purchased by the general public?
The ones we have now are not. So you can go out and just purchase those same drones. But like I mentioned, we are looking to get an upgraded drone that's more for commercial operation, more for industrial inspection type of thing that you could go get, but you couldn't go to Best Buy and pick one up for sure.
Got it. Let's see, we answered that. So they want to know, when you are doing storm or damage assessment, what's the process once you get those pictures? How do you relay that to the responsible party?
So there's a couple ways we can do that. Really, the Encore Media Portal that IT set up for us is the first resort. Since it's a cloud-based storage, you can access it just through any online browser. So being able to upload those pictures to there and then just share a link with your contact where they need to go to, they can then go and look at them. Otherwise, we can take screenshots. We can't email the raw photos themselves on our network, again, for cybersecurity concerns. But if we need to mark up a photo, you could mark it up, screenshot it, and then be able to send that or put that on the media portal. But that's been how we've been doing it.
Great, thanks. It looks like we've got a lot of Encore drone pilot questions. What is needed to join Encore's drone team? Is that open to everybody or just a certain department?
It's case by case basis. We've mostly kept that within transmission currently, and we do have a process laid out. So they would have to get their FAA certification, and we can help them do that a little bit. And then we have our own internal pilot training as well that they would have to go through to be able to be certified to fly for Encore. And that involves really just learning the SOP, making sure they're fully aware of that and the safety rules, learning how to operate the equipment we have, the drones we have, and then hands-on flying training as well.
Perfect. Let's see. After we go back to the office and when COVID is over, is there a possibility to see drones in operation or drone demonstrations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. For other groups that are interested in getting into it, we can definitely do that.
Great. We're coming in quick. Does the Encore drone fleet include any LiDAR sensors, and are there any plans to perform LiDAR survey using UAS?
We don't have that capability right now. I don't really foresee that being a big use case in the near future. Really, once you start getting into the LiDAR world, that then falls into having to process all the data as well. And I know our transmission engineering group has, they use LiDAR contractors, and I know some of them have used drones to get some of that LiDAR, depending on how big of a section it is. But it's definitely an avenue we could pursue in the future.
Perfect. One person asked, besides cameras, is there anything else you can mount to the drones that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, there's all different types of cameras. So, I mean, that covers a lot of it. You can, like I said, you can get just plain cameras, video cameras. You can get up to 100 megapixel cameras if you really want some high resolution. We mentioned LiDAR, so that's another one. Lights, I think they make lights that you can mount. Loudspeakers, I don't really see a use case for us really with having that. That's more for like police, fire, first responders. They even make like RGB cameras, the thermal cameras. It's really growing. That the technology is really advancing, so who knows what we'll see here in the future.
Perfect. Couple of comments saying this is really interesting. Thank you so much. A lot of people very interested in drones here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I can scroll through some of them too.
I think we've covered most of these other ones, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. This was so informative. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us about it today. Thanks everyone on the call for joining us today. Be sure and check out our Innovation Week website and the internet homepage to listen to a message from Joel Austin about innovation in tech and why it's so important here at Encore. Congratulations to our prize winners yesterday. We're drawing 20 names each day for every session you attend, or you're entered for a prize every session you attend. And we hope to see you at the next session. Thank you guys so much and have a good day and stay safe.